The courtroom buzzed with hushed anticipation long before the session began. By the time the clock reached 9, every seat was filled. At the plaintiff's table sat Riley Morgan, a 34-year-old emergency room nurse and mother of two. She wore the same blue scrubs she had on during her 12-hour overnight shift. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, and her hospital ID badge still hung from her side. The soles of her sneakers were thinning, the laces tied hastily as if thrown on while running out the door. Because they were, she hadn't gone home. She hadn't had a chance to wash her face, change clothes, or even eat breakfast. She had come directly from the trauma ward to fight for her children. This hearing wasn't optional. Her ex-husband had filed for partial custody, citing her supposed emotional instability and absence due to long working hours. He had hired a high-powered attorney, and Riley was exhausted but resolute. She had brought documentation. She had supporting witnesses. But what she hadn't prepared for was the moment the judge looked up and saw her. Presiding over the case was Judge Meredith Halston, a 62-year-old figure of poise and precision. Her suits were immaculate, her tone unyielding. She looked up from her papers and locked eyes with Riley. "Miss Morgan," she said sharply, "are you under the impression that this is a hospital?" Riley blinked. "No, Your Honor. I just finished my shift." Judge Halston arched an eyebrow. "This is a courtroom, not a staff lounge. You are expected to dress appropriately." A low murmur stirred the audience. Riley's lawyer, Craig Dinner, began to interject, but the judge raised her hand to silence him. "Save it. This is a child custody hearing. You've presented yourself in what amounts to pajamas." Riley straightened in her seat. All eyes turned toward her, some sympathetic, others confused or judgmental. But she didn't retreat. She met the judge's gaze head-on. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she said calmly, "these scrubs still have blood on them. It's not mine. It's from a 7-year-old boy I resuscitated at 4:17 this morning. I didn't have time to change. I only had time to choose, save a life or be 5 minutes late changing clothes for this courtroom." The room froze. Judge Halston seemed ready to speak, but her mouth remained open in silence. The buzzing overhead lights suddenly felt louder. Riley sat still, her voice unwavering, her hands still bearing faint marks from gloves, tape, and ink scribbles on the trauma board. Her lawyer sat quietly beside her, stunned. From the gallery, someone raised a phone and began recording. Judge Halston took a breath. "This is not a platform for dramatics, Miss Morgan." "No, ma'am," Riley replied evenly. "It's a courtroom, and I respected it enough to show up, even if it meant not changing after helping someone's son survive." The judge's gavel came down, one sharp rap. "Proceed." But outside the courtroom, the clip hit social media. Nurse shamed for wearing scrubs to court. Her response? Pure strength. By lunchtime, the video had gone viral. 500,000 views turned to 5 million by mid-afternoon. Riley's words echoed across platforms. "Save a life or change for you." "I chose the life." News segments picked it up. Hashtags trended. Hashtag respect the scrubs. Hashtag nurse justice. Hashtag let her wear it. But inside, Riley had no idea. She wasn't checking her phone. She was watching the clock. After court, she had to pick up her daughter from school. In the same bloodied scrubs. The same ones now carrying more than fabric stains. They carried a story. Opposing counsel, Jordan Kessler, approached the podium. Tailored gray suit, gold cufflinks, smooth voice. "Miss Morgan, you chose to work a full night shift before your hearing today?" "Yes, sir." "Knowing you had a legal obligation this morning?" "Yes." "Would you say that means you prioritize your job over your children?" A hush fell. Riley leaned forward slightly. "No, sir. I prioritize saving someone else's child. Because if it were my daughter on that table at 4 a.m., I'd want someone to stay. I didn't choose between my job and my kids. I chose to be the kind of mother I'd want my kids to have if they were ever in need." Kessler faltered. But Riley wasn't finished. "And for the record, every shift I work keeps food on their table and the lights on. These scrubs might not impress this courtroom, but they do more for my family than any pressed suit ever has." The judge didn't interrupt. Kessler cleared his throat. You sound emotional. Riley exhaled. I'm not emotional. I'm tired. There's a difference. One is a response to hurt. The other is what happens when you're giving everything to hold a family together and people still tell you it isn't enough. Something shifted. The tension in the room transformed. Suddenly, the legal jargon, the cold procedures, the suits, they all felt hollow compared to what one woman had just embodied. Grace under pressure. Judge Halston called for a recess. People began standing when Craig Dinner rose. Your Honor, if I may, we have a witness who just arrived. The judge nodded. The doors opened and in walked Dr. Alicia Brennan, Chief of Emergency Medicine at Capital Regional Hospital. White coat, calm eyes, no notes. Riley stared. She had no idea Dr. Brennan was coming. Sworn in, Brennan stood tall. I'm here to clarify who Riley Morgan is, because it seems this court mistook her appearance for disrespect. Riley is the nurse who takes command when chaos hits. She's the one who stays late, skips lunch, and comforts the dying when no one else can. She left after saving a child and ran here to fight for her own. The courtroom quieted. Dr. Brennan pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. This is a letter from the boy's parents, written after they found out where she went. The clerk read aloud. To whom it may concern, if Riley Morgan had not stayed past her shift, our son would not be breathing. Give her children back. She's earned them 100 times over. Tears fell. The judge did not strike her gavel. She looked at Riley, something breaking behind her careful facade. When court resumed after lunch, the gallery had tripled. Nurses, EMTs, firefighters stood along the wall in silent support. Judge Halston entered, scanned the room, and cleared her throat. Before we proceed, the court has reviewed testimony, transcripts, and today's events. Miss Morgan, your words about choosing to be the kind of mother who shows up for her children struck a chord. A pause. True decorum isn't about pressed collars. It's about sacrifice. She turned to the reporter. Strike all prior comments about her attire from the record. Gasps echoed. Still, she wasn't done. We've seen polished deceivers in this courtroom. Today, we saw someone who stood after saving a life and was shamed for not looking the part. Miss Morgan, I owe you not just an apology. I owe you gratitude. The gallery stood, one by one. No applause, just reverence. Even Kessler rose, bowed his head, and when it was his turn to speak, he simply said, I withdraw my closing argument. I was wrong. Judge Halston leaned forward. Full legal and physical custody shall remain with Miss Riley Morgan. There is no evidence, legal or otherwise, that suggests these children belong anywhere else. Riley didn't cry. She just breathed. From this day forward, the judge added, nurses arriving after shift will be offered water, not warnings. The room erupted, not in chaos, in applause. Outside, the crowd had grown. Media flooded the steps. Riley said nothing to reporters. She walked past them, scrubs and all, to hug her children. Is it over? Her daughter asked. Riley smiled. No, baby. It just started. Weeks later, Capitol Hill passed the Morgan Standard, a policy safeguarding emergency workers' right to wear uniforms in court if arriving directly from duty. The story made national headlines. Riley received letters from nurses, moms, students. Her scrubs were requested for a museum exhibit on American labor. She mailed them in silence. The plaque read, the scrubs that showed up. And every time a judge now sees a tired nurse in court, they pause. Because once, one of them changed how justice dresses, with truth, not tailoring.